in the New Testament. And, well, it's clear. It's not what I expect, and certainly not what I expect there in the church, is for someone to have the experience they had. Again, the story is an easy story. It's a straightforward story about Ananias and Sapphira, husband and wife, and they're in the early church. And I can't overemphasize that enough. The early church, this is the church way, way back. I mean, probably just a few weeks after the church had actually been founded, just a couple of months after Jesus had died on the cross. So we are talking early church. And their members there, the common practice there at that time was to give everything to God. To give everything. And it wasn't written down, it wasn't a rule, it wasn't a law. It's just what people seemed to do during this early part of the church, and it went away. People didn't do that forever, but they needed to back in this early time, and so they did it. They felt called to it, and they gave. And there were other people who felt a real pressure that they needed to do that too. They needed to give everything. If they sold some land, they would give everything. And they thought they probably didn't want to just get part of it. And that's what Ananias and Sapphira were going through. They wanted people to think they gave everything, but they didn't actually want to give everything. And so that's what they did. They held back. They didn't give everything. They held back, and they lied to the church. They lied to the disciples. And they lied to God, as it turned out. And when it all came out, they were struck dead. Struck dead. First the husband, and then the wife. They died. Wow. That's amazing. Struck dead because of this. What is that? How could that be? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then I started thinking, well, this is such a different time. And we think about the way the church was at that moment. Boy, it was so important that everybody do their utmost for the church. Remember, this is the church in its earliest days. If this church, the church in Jerusalem at this moment, is to go under, if it's going to fail, then that's it. The Christian message is over. It's gone, and God would have to start again in some new way to get the message of Christ's death and resurrection out again. It was absolutely crucial that this church survive, because there wasn't a church in Antioch, and there wasn't a church in Philippi. They didn't exist, nor was there a church in Rome. This was it. This was everything. Think of the pressure that was on that church to do everything that they could. No wonder people just started giving everything they possibly could to the church. The life of the church depended on it. Everything depended on it. We here today are here because they did all that they could back then. Everything that they could. Imagine what that would be like. What would it be like here today? And imagine this with me, if you will. Here today, all of a sudden we were to find out that we were the only church. The only church on earth. It's it, and it's these people that you're looking at, the folks in the traditional service and the folks in the service in Spanish. Imagine that. Wouldn't that change the way you view church? Wouldn't that change the way you feel about it? Wouldn't that change how you act and what you do? That would change everything. Imagine, we have that experience, and we are the last church. We are the only church on earth, just as the church in Jerusalem was. Well, I think our evangelism takes on a whole new meaning. The willingness of each of us to share with others, to share the good news of Jesus Christ, that takes on an importance that not just all those people who feel called to evangelism should do it. No, we all need to do it. Because that's it. If we don't grow, if this message doesn't get out, it's not going to survive. And it's not good enough if we fill up this place and we fill up our sanctuary and we fill up our chapel on the 3rd floor. That's nothing. That's nothing. We've got to get this message spread, don't we? We've got to get it all over the country. We've got to get it all over the world. We have to make sure that if something happens to us, that the message survives. The gospel survives. We've got to come up with a plan. Let's do that right now. Let's talk about, we got to send some people to another city and start another church. Who's got friends and family in Dallas and Fort Worth? Dallas and Fort Worth, okay? All right, great. Well, you guys are going to be part of the group that starts the new church in Dallas and Fort Worth. And we're going to send you over there and support you. And we also need some people. Oh, gosh, we should start our own state. What about Baton Rouge? Friends and family in Baton Rouge? Yes, thank you. I know y'all. Great, okay. Well, we're going to send y'all down, start a church in Baton Rouge. And how about one more? Houston? Houston, any family friends in Houston? Okay, great. Got family and friends. So we got to start those 3 churches, and we got to get it out. Maybe in 5 years, or 10 years, or 15, we'll have churches in all the big cities, and we'll have a church in New York, and we'll have a church in Washington, and one in Los Angeles. And now the message will be ready, and it will be spread all over the world. Oh, and what about this? You know, for the last 2,000 years, every day for the last 2,000 years, people have been fed in the name of Christ. They've been given the gift of food in the name of Christ. I don't want this week to be the first week that goes by in 2,000 years that nobody is fed in the name of Christ. We've got to do that this week as well. That's one thing we're going to be changed. We have got to do it because nobody else is out there doing it. No one else is feeding people in the name of Christ. And so we have to. We must. What about the way we treat one another? We're a loving church. We treat each other well, but gosh, if we were the only church, the only Christians, wouldn't we be treating each other with great love? If this were the only place that people could go to experience the love of Christ, well, we've got to treat each other with such love so that when our guests come in here, they feel it. They're going to know we are Christians by our love. It's going to be true. And we're going to get real sentimental and real mushy, and we're going to start telling each other, I love you, I love you. And we may even look across the room at people we don't know, and we may feel genuine love in our hearts for them because we know that that person shares our love for Jesus Christ, shares our love for God, and that alone binds us together because this is it. These are the only folks that believe that. And wouldn't that affect our giving too? I mean, there would be those in our church I know who would want to give everything because we know that every dollar would count. Whether or not this message would survive, whether or not it was going to get out, would depend on maybe $1 that may be given or may not be given. And we would want to give our utmost to make sure that in 2,000 years, people are still worshiping God. That people are still finding God's love through His Son, Jesus Christ. Yes, we would be like that early church. We would give our utmost. Oh, enough. That was a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure to be the only church on earth. It's up to us. It's nice just, I don't have to worry about it. If we don't feed people, God, the church down the street will feed them. We're not going to have evangelism, that's all right. Plenty of churches will do evangelism. They'll do it. They'll be happy to. We're not going to do it. Whew, we can sit back a little bit. We can relax. We don't have to worry about it. But you know what's kind of exciting there for a minute? To think about being the only church. To think about everything being on us, our responsibility. If we don't do it, no one will. It'd be nice if we could capture just part of that. Harness just a little bit of it. Well, you know, for our kids here, this church is kind of like the only church. Right? It's the place they come. It's like the only place. They know there are other churches out there, but this is where they know church. My son Will has been here so long that this is, when he thinks of the church, he thinks of this place. When my son Will thinks of Christian people, he sees your faces. Yeah, this is someplace like the only church. And it's that way, too, for some of the people who've been here for years and years. Literally, for them, they've been here all their lives. And so 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 80 years, some people have been worshiping here. And for them, in a very real way, this is the only church. I think, too, about our guests. Some of our guests, too, have come here. And some of them, right away, they come here. This is the first church they try, and they try it out. And they like it, and they stay. And some, of course, don't care for it, and they go, they're looking for something else. But then there are others who come and they have looked at church after church after church, and they're not finding it, they're not connecting, and then finally they come here, and this is the right match for them. For them, in a real way, this is the only church. Because this is the place where they feel God's love, and this is the place where they feel connected. I think it's true for each of us here today. In this hour where we could be anywhere. We could be doing anything. We could certainly be in any church in this area. We choose to be here. For us, in a very real way, this is like the only church. Well, it is true we are unique. There is no other church just like this one. And the people that we feed, the people that we attract, the people that are fed by what we do here, there is a group of them. And what we do is very specific. And what would happen if we were gone? What would happen to our children? What would happen to our guests? What would happen to those we have been called to serve and to minister to? And what would happen to each of us? No, we're not the only church in the world. But we are the only church like us. And that's something worth being excited about. And excited in every way possible. Our talking, our sharing, our giving, and the love that we share in all of those ways. Let us bow in prayer. Loving God, thank you for this place where we can come. Thank you for this time that we can worship. Loving God, help us to see it for what it is. Help us to always remember and recognize its uniqueness. And help us to always, always feel the value of your gospel as we proclaim it here. In Jesus Christ's name we pray.